Hey, everybody. Hey. If you are tuning into this live, you are listening to That Shift, which is a business podcast. My name is Kenyana David, and I am the host. I share this platform typically with friends and family who are in the entrepreneurial space. It is a live, unedited, unfiltered podcast that we talk about that shift, and how you heard it is exactly how I meant it to be heard. So typically we would have someone on and I'd have this conversation with them. But today I wanted to have a very raw, very vulnerable conversation about deep shifting and what that looks like for entrepreneurs who are making decisions like myself, and with making those decisions in real life, in real time, and particularly with diversifying revenue streams, adding product lines, adding service lines, or even subtracting what that looks like. And for me in this moment, what that looks like. And I was back and forth with whether to have this conversation because, generally speaking, I will have this conversation with friends, and I'd unpack and I can be vulnerable and I can really be honest about my strengths and my weaknesses and allow for them to support me. And then by the time the public or the world sees this end result, it has already went through, the ugly cries or the self-doubt or the fears or the hesitancy. It already went through that. But what's happening now in my business really has a lot to do with this podcast and why I started it. And so I'll take you back a little bit, so that I'll give some full context, and then I'll share what decisions I'm making and what that process looks for me of letting go who I am currently to become the person that I need to be for the next phase of my business. With this being live, let me know your thoughts. Feel free to share your shifting or your deep shift that's happening in your business. I can see them in the comments. Donnie, I appreciate you. We can have this conversation together. I promise to be transparent and to be honest. And you take what you need and leave what you don't. Depending on where you are in your business, you may or may not relate. But my priority with this episode is just to call a thing a thing. So with that being said, let's get right to it. And really quickly, with us being live, if I do not see your comment or your question straight away, charge it to my head and not my heart, and I will circle back and love on you after the episode has ended. So with that being said, I am and have been in the entrepreneurial space for some years. And this particular business that I have now, 8118, which is a boutique marketing firm that specializes in email marketing. My business pronouns are she and her. She's 5. And when I first started the business, I was doing digital marketing work. I was kind of high level focusing on all 7 areas of digital marketing, from referral to social to email to affiliate, etc. And At the time, while I understood my strengths in digital marketing, what kind of certifications I could acquire and did, it was very high level. And I was working with a coach, and I expressed it's too much. It's too much to remember. It's too much to follow. It's too much to really think about. And with clients, I feel like I'm all over the place. One person needs social media stuff. Someone else wants to know about affiliate stuff. And it was very taxing to me. It was very frustrating. There were a lot of information out there that was being shared by the platforms themselves. So Facebook, for example, wherever you lived, you may or may not have heard about Facebook was traveling at one point, and they had come to Buffalo, and the goal was to get involved in the community and teach content creators how to properly use Facebook. So they had workshops, they had giveaways. It was a whole experience, a really, really dope experience. But when you think about the fact that Facebook was doing it, so was Twitter, so was the other platforms. And I was really overwhelmed. I was really overwhelmed with all the knowledge, wanting to stay ahead of the curve, wanting to stay ahead of competitors. And I got this coach, and I said, I can't do this. This is not sustainable. I'm going to burn out. And she said, well, what's your jam? Like, what do you really enjoy and you feel good about? And I said, I really like the email stuff. I really like that. I love the certifications that were offered from, HubSpot, from the platforms themselves. And right around that time, I was really into blogging. I was really, really into blogging, and Active Campaign reached out and said, hey, you seem to know a lot about this stuff. Would you be interested in being a partner? So right around this time, I'm working with this coach, and we are kind of unpacking the pros and cons. And I was afraid. If I'm honest, I was afraid to niche down. I was worried about my constituents, who was all going to leave or stay, what kind of opportunities would be presented to me. Social media has always been, of the digital marketing, the most popular. Whether it was the highest ROI, it didn't matter. It was the most popular, and people wanted to get in on social media. So with that, I was afraid. And I'm thinking, Nicole, her name is Nicole. And I'm thinking, this is wild. I am not going to make any money. I've been full-time in 8118 for the 5 years. I'm going to have to get a job. And she said, just try it. Just give it a go. What's the worst can happen? What you think is the worst that can happen, if it does, we'll deal with it when we get there. And so I niched down to email, and this took about a year. It was not a fast project. It was not a hustle. It was not a grind. It was a lot of resistance. I was punching the air the entire time. So we finally get this laid out, and it works. The shift worked. It worked. It turned out to be the best decision for 8118 as its own thing, but also for me, because it allowed me to be great in a concentrated area. So with that, hey, Sandra, hey, it allowed me to to be great in that space and allowed me to be creative. And I will always publicly acknowledge Nicole. Her name is Nicole Overcamp. And I will always acknowledge her because she encouraged me, just feel the fear and do it anyway. Like, you can be scared, you can be fearful, but do all the things, Toots. Do all the things. So with that, with niching down, I became the only well, let me go back a moment. I started an academy. And with the academy, originally it was supposed to be one class and one set of office hours. That's it. And it turned into something absolutely amazing. In the infancy stages of the academy, it won an award. It won its first award. And with that, that's where things really took off. And, I remember it so well because I was so scared of all these things. Niching down, what did that look like? And, we are told to be agile and to be flexible and be able to do all the things. But there was such a power, an opportunity in being a super in one thing. So with the academy, with the first award, it opened the doors. It opened the doors of do more. And I was always aligned with education. I was always aligned as an educator. And before the academy, I became an adjunct. And that was part of getting ready for this thing. I knew I wanted done with you services, not done for you, which what I was coming from is doing the work for someone. And that was very stressful, for me as a creator. My capacity runs dry. It becomes too much. And I'm not doing my best. So I wanted to have done with you services. I wanted to be a part of whatever was created, but I didn't want to create it. And I also had become frustrated, and I didn't want to become resentful. And I think that's another thing we don't talk about as entrepreneurs, the type of work we do. If we're not doing our jam, we're not doing our thing, we become resentful of the work we're doing because we feel like we're doing too much. So that's what it was looking like for me. I'm doing all this stuff and people don't know what they want. They know what they don't want, but they don't know what they want. And so they're rejecting my good stuff. And so when I moved into email, I was like, I'll do it with you. Let's tap into what you really, really like. And then I can, do some fancy footwork with that. And then it moved into teaching. I decided to become a adjunct professor and really learn what curriculum was, really unpack how we learn, not how we receive information that we're told, but how we learn and the neurodiversity in that. And that was very powerful. That was probably hands down one of the best moves I made as far as being in alignment with my future self with things. So, I started teaching. I started teaching at Madai. Madai College and then university has now closed, but they were indispensable in where I ultimately went because they allowed me to ask questions and to test myself. I remember going, I would remember going to the chair and I wanted to know, how do you build curriculum? I know how to teach it now. I think I got that down, but how do you build it? And she showed me. She showed me. She sent me all kinds of tools and templates that are from the top down, New York State. And that was, I don't even have a word for that. That was very powerful, very impactful. And so the academy went from a class and some office hours or just some opportunities to connect one on one to a full out school where there's classes and there's labs and there's office hours and there's homeroom and there's PE, which is productivity exercises. There's honors, there's clubs. There's now field trips where I can travel around the country and the world to hear or meet students. The academy went from folks here in Buffalo to New York City. So then it's in New York State, and then it spread across the U.S. It was really dope. It went out the country, and it was a slow process in the sense of I couldn't have imagined it. I was again punching the air with Nicole, like, am I going to make it? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my business? I had two businesses prior to that didn't succeed, and it was a scary thing. So now it's time to shift again. And for well over a year, we're moving toward 2. I have been really punching the air again. So with teaching, so Madai closed August of last year. And I was in the business department, and I was also, I was adjunct in the business department and an adjunct in the interdisciplinary studies department. So I'm teaching critical thinking and leadership in interdisciplinary studies, and I'm teaching business and marketing in business. And they allowed me to double dip. They allowed me to kind of share thoughts based on me being, my experience being in business. So now with the critical thinking, I'm teaching them to critically think as a business person, not necessarily an owner, but a person that understands business. Now, part of my frustration in that space of being a professor was there was such a pride and such a sense of accomplishment to be helping students who want to know more about business, teaching them and putting them in a position to get a degree. Basically giving a thumbs up to the university saying this person's ready. They passed this class. They have enough knowledge to go out into the world and be great in this area. But underneath my feelings, there was a lot of deep shift about that, because I understood at the same time that the degree program was to teach students who are interested in business to go and work for another business, to be great at another business, to help them accomplish their mission, go toward their vision, help them be successful. It was not designed to send them into entrepreneurship or business ownership. That was the reality of it. And whether I was with it or not, that's what it was. But as a person whose career is based on creating boxes and then checking those boxes, I was teaching people to check boxes, and it created a lot of internal turmoil. I was very frustrated, very, at times angry, not at the students, but kind of at myself to some extent, because I was with the shift, like I was really, signing off on this, I was getting up, I was teaching these students, going by this curriculum, knowing that they really didn't give a damn, some of them, you know? And so there was some frustration in that. And I was thinking I would prefer to be doing this for entrepreneurs and small business owners who need the information, who could really use what I knew to be true from a book standpoint as well as an experience standpoint. So with the academy being an international school, there was a lot of things I had come into that was not in the books. In the books, it was about ethics and culture and understanding, how companies in different countries, but they were using examples like McDonald's or, other, if they were to graduate, if the students were to graduate and to decide to work for, say, Amazon in another country, they'd have some couth. They know how to conduct themselves as an American business person who is smooth and savvy and aware. But it had nothing, absolutely nothing to do with if you were to sell your products and services in another country. And I felt, pretty weird. I'll use that word. I think that word is probably more appropriate. I felt really weird about not acknowledging what I really have to offer. And a student asked me one day in the elevator, and I'll never forget him because he was that student that while I pray he graduated, I don't think that was ever really the goal. I think it was, I am binding time. And, he was working for one of those, I think it's called 3M, and then I think it's like a 3M, like the layered companies. And, he was thinking, I'm going to move up in the company, and they are identifying me as an entrepreneur, that I have my own business. I can make my own money. I could create my own team. And he had the audacity. If he's listening to this, I saw you. I remember you. He would take calls with these proposed billionaires in the corner of the room because he was on a business meeting. And for that reason, he couldn't be tapped in to what was happening in the classroom. And I remember him because while I loved on him as a young person, he did very much represent the thought process of now, and he asked me in the elevator, and he asked me if I really needed my degrees to be an entrepreneur. And the truth of the matter was, no, I didn't, but it has given me a competitive edge. So no, I do not feel like I wasted time. I think that you too should at least get your degree and then just move in a direction that you want. And if you need it later, you have it, right? You kind of can identify what's happening in the company and move strategically and et cetera. But, it was always an upset for me that I wasn't teaching entrepreneurs. I wasn't teaching people that really needed this information to make a major shift in their business. But that's where I was. And everything happens the way it's supposed to. I was just saying to a friend last night, I very much believe everything happens by design. There's no such thing as accidents. There's no such things as coincidence, happenstances, coinky dinks. Like it's always on purpose. And, it's intentional and deliberate, everything that's happening. Madai closes. And, it was definitely an O shift moment because I really enjoyed being an educator. And even though I had my own school, there was a sense of give back, a sense of this was not an opportunity that was presented to me in this way. I was very focused on being a certain type of, hey Mo, being a certain type of professor. So my first undergrad is in economics. Of course, I graduated when the economy was a bust. But ultimately, I ended up going back and getting an undergraduate and a graduate in business. But my professors, I remember them as being very formulaic and very much, this is what it is. But the funny thing about it, looking back, they themselves were not entrepreneurs or small business owners. They just knew something about this topic, and based on their resume, they were teaching the class. So in the classroom, I really wanted to offer that experience and education. And a lot of my teaching was not from the book. They had a book. And at one point, I wrote a book for them to use, but it wasn't from the book. It was, this is the real. This is what it really is. And I am still, and I'm so grateful for it, still friends with students now. Now we're friends. Before we were not yet friends, but the ones that have businesses that are doing really, really dope things, and I don't even want to list them because I don't want to leave anybody out and not love on them in a good and proper way. But I see them, and I absolutely, hands down, adore them, and they are doing such cool things, and their businesses are growing, and their capacity is growing, whether that be their time, their energy, their money, is growing. And it's such a cool thing to see. And I'm always so proud that I had that opportunity. But it was always some upset, deep down there was upset. There was a bit of a discouragement to that too. But it brings me to now. So Madai closes. I'm still, popping in and there with local colleges and talking about business. But lately, I have really been playing with the idea of what's next. And a lot of my friends, the majority of my friends, are business owners, and they're at different stages of their business. They have different offerings, different products, different services. Some have employees, some don't. And I'd been kind of bringing it up. I want to teach. I want to really tap into business. I love marketing. I do. I do not plan to leave it. I absolutely adore the academy. But the reality of it is my work really bases from business. Business is necessary to even market. You have to be doing business or preparing to do business, right? You can't just be out here. You have to have some sort of business. And a lot of my work, contract work, and I think that's the thing too. We'll unpack that in a different episode. But the idea of where revenue really comes from. And since we're talking about revenue streams and diversifying them and creating that life of a business, a lot of what's said on social media and in different circles is that if you are doing, say, coaching, you are making all of your money from coaching. You're making all of your money from consulting. You're making all of your money from this product line or service line or a combo, that your money's coming from that. And you have folks saying, I hit the 6-figure mark or the 7-figure mark, and they aren't being honest. Let's just call a thing a thing. They're not being honest as to how they really got there. And the reality for my business is what's public facing is those offers, the academy, classes, workshops, maybe collaborations with other entrepreneurs. But how I eat is contracts. It's contracts from schools, colleges, universities, to organizations, to companies. That's how I pay my rent. That's how I feed myself and clothe myself. That's not to say that the revenue streams that are forward facing aren't honest or honest work. It's just not substantive always enough. And so as business owners, we have to diversify our revenue streams. Now, I'll save for another episode of what that looks like, because that does not mean that you have, you're selling this and then you're selling that and you're selling a whole bunch of different types of things, as much as like it's all streamlined in one business. But for the sake of this conversation, we have to do that. And sometime that shift, especially that deep shift, is, and it is for me in this moment, is who am I really? And what do I believe in? Excuse me, where does my honesty lie with myself? How do I sleep at night? What is important to me? And generally, where you really focus is what's important to you. For me, that looks like, being a doctoral candidate in business, which is wild to me that I fight so much and have been, when it has been very clear all along. I've been moving down this path of business and I love it. I absolutely love it. I am always tapped in, from, watching TED Talks to, going to business competitions. A lot of my interest is actually not in marketing. I can do marketing. And I think that's always the thing too, what you can do and what you want to do. And when that shift happens. And for me, that looked like being almost embarrassed. You've created these cool things and now you're going to abort mission. You're just going to just go. And that was, what will people think of me? What will my constituents think of me? What will students in the academy think of me? And even though that shift from marketing, specifically email marketing, to business is not a major shift, if I am honest, it is a whole nother way of thinking. It's a whole nother creative process. It's a whole nother set of target marketing and outreach and networking. And I've been afraid of that. I've been afraid of all that I've invested in just being a super in email, now shifting to look at what's happening in business. Who is doing business stuff, whether it's workshops or programming or one-to-ones or masterminds, who's doing what. And what's been really wild for me is that some of those people that are doing those things, they're friends, and I support my friends. I do. I love all of them individually and collectively. They do something. I am on the phone, early mornings, late nights, jamming it out. And for me, it's part from a business standpoint of the development of things. And then also from a friend, I want you to win, So that has been particularly bothersome, and confusing, confusing as to how they will receive it. So I've had several conversations with entrepreneurs that are in the business space, which I am glad that I did, but it has been helping. It has been helping to really niche down into what is good for me. For me, doing teaching in a space of like in the infancy stages of business is not really my jam. It's not my jam only because I am so passionate about international business. I'm so passionate about contract work and kind of like this fantastical idea, that this narrative that's put out there that if you get, 10 clients that are paying you, your value, and your value is $10,000 for your program, then you're going to be good. But the reality of that is, while it's not fantastical that it can happen, it's fantastical when it can happen. So having contracts, and you hear about certification, and I appreciate those conversations as well. But you can get substantive contracts based on what your skills are, what you have done, what you can do, and I really want to tap into that. So, for the sake of this conversation, of this episode, it has been something I literally have been punching the air over. It has nothing to do with can I do it? It is, what does this look like? And a part of me, because I have been here before, know that it'll probably be the best thing. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. It's going to work. But then the very human part of me is like, how do you know? How can you be sure? What is your capacity? When you think 5 years ago, your energy level's different. Your who you are is different. Now I have fears that I didn't know that I had. I have exposure to fears that I didn't know should be fears. And then also, the other thing that I think about is the success that you have in one thing. And this could be even in a job setting. When you know what you're doing. So, for example, when I was younger, I worked in hospitality. And I worked in hospitality for way too long, but it was because it was comfortable. I knew how to do that job from a phone call. I was a night auditor. Excuse me. And when they would have a new auditor, he or she could call me and I can walk them through the process. I didn't need to be there. I can tell them the left, the third button on the left, or, you print 2 times, you give it to this person there, the mailbox at the very top on the corner. I knew my job. And it's the same way in entrepreneurship. I know how to get things done in the space that I'm in. I know how fast I can do it. I know how to do it when I'm well. I know how to do it when I'm not well. I know how to do it with or without support. I know how to do it. I just know how to do it. And it has been some fear with doing something different. And with diversifying, excuse me, with diversifying my revenue streams, I haven't always been scared. This isn't, I've been in this one pocket of space and I was fine. It wasn't that at all. It was, when it was time to say, write a book, cool, no problem, check a box. When it came down to playing out the academy and adding subscription boxes, okay, cool, just learn it. There was no fear of that. Now, caution, is this smart? Is this a good investment? Is this something that has some longevity to it? Of course, that's with any product or service line or any addition. And there's a lot of things that just didn't work. It's with all of us, all entrepreneurs and small business owners create stuff that just doesn't, just don't damn work. People didn't want it, or they didn't want it at the time that you created it. And there was never a fear of failure with that. It was, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to create this class and we'll see who signs up. And there's been times 70 plus folks signed up, and there's been time fewer than 7 signed up. And that's always a thing. It's always going to be one of those wonky things that you just got to have the belly for it. But shifting your focus, shifting your energy, and then asking folks to come with you or to understand what it is. And one of the things that I've been a little afraid of with that is I have accepted my truth of what I'm doing. Marketing is presumptuous. Marketing is skipping steps, especially for some that I have been introduced to. And it has never been fraudulent. I've never felt that way. I sleep at night with that I'm doing honest work, but I also know that some of these entrepreneurs and small business owners, their businesses aren't developed enough to really appreciate what's happening. And with that, there's some sadness to it, because I know that they need business support. I know that they need foundational lessons to really maximize their investment into marketing. And when I feel that way, I try to offer a little extra, but that's where, you got business coaches, they have a team of different people in areas and zones of genius and skill. And they take what they need and they leave what they don't. But the reality of it is they want marketing. So, there's a lot of deep shifting in who I am, who I am as a person, wanting folks to have an experience that, yes, I paid Kenyana money. I invested in what Kenyana was doing. But I want to feel good about how it was done. I want to feel good about my intention. And that's where I've been, thinking about adding that, diversifying, my revenue stream to really give folks an opportunity to pick up what I'm putting down. I think when it's like a compact deal, a combo of sorts where I'm going to give you some business advice, that's what it is. It's not a real coaching, it's not a real consulting, it's not advisory, it's advice, and it's unsolicited, and that's always kind of weird. So, with that, I've really been preparing, and preparing looks like this episode, just calling a thing, not in a strategic, specific kind of way of, I'm going to tell you my story and you're going to come on board because you're going to be able to relate, but just more of being open and honest about my intention, about me seeing a gap in what I'm doing, me seeing an opportunity to be great, to be greater in something that I am already doing, and also to chat with my new entrepreneurial friends, those who are live. I see you, but I don't. Let me know that you're here in the comments so I can, give you a good and proper love. But just to say this is a truth in entrepreneurship. It is a very real thing. Taking ego out, taking what we want people to think about us as this boss babe, this preneur, whatever we're adding to preneur, whether it's mompreneur, whatever, blackpreneur, whatever we're adding to it, we all are dealing with the same shift, right? We are still have that deep shift of, what do I do next? And the longer you are in business, the more you have to do this. You have to do it. And the faster it comes, the less we think about it. But it's those things that kind of linger. And for time, this is moving toward 2 years of, is this a good fit? Does this make sense? And even though I have been strategic about lining up my intentions, at the baseline has always been business. Right now in my doctoral program, my focus is strategic marketing, specifically strategic marketing and AI. But in the reality, I'm getting a DBA, which is a practitioner doctorate of business administration. So it's still been business. I've almost by design not let it go. And now it's, what do you, or for me, what do I fear the most? Am I afraid of failing? Which is really not, I'm not really afraid of failing. But it's a question I ask myself, am I afraid of failing? Or am I afraid of the person that people believe me to be? I'm very involved in the entrepreneurial small business community. I'm very involved with a lot of the organizations and the programming, either from a facilitator or teaching standpoint to being a participant, and am I okay with folks looking at me and thinking my contribution to this conversation or my presence at this event or thing is marketing? And how do I align the two? And I've been, really working with that, and working on, what am I good at in real life? What do I really want to align myself with? Do I want to teach things that I think I'm better at teaching than somebody else? Which, what I'm the most interested in, I don't think people care enough about. not so much care about, but it's not the thing they want to teach, and it's almost like, again, punching the air, creating these scenarios. And that's what fear does, right? We create these narratives and these situations that have not yet played out. And we are prepared for war, and no one wants to fight us, right? Nobody is interested in even showing up for the fight. So, that's been a real thing. But I wanted, and I will continue, because I am there, but I'm not there. I am, but I'm not. But I am, but I'm not. And but I wanted to initiate this conversation with entrepreneurs. It's a thing. It's a thing, and whatever the feeling is, whether it's embarrassment, fear, sometimes shame, confusion, not having this new 60-second pitch prepared. It does require us to show up differently, to really tap into who we are and who we want to be and who we need to be in those spaces. And part of needing who we need to be in those spaces is a confident person, right? A person that's like, I can do this. When I walk into a space, a marketing space, oh, don't let it be an email marketing space. You can't tell me nothing. Like, I know it. I know it. I have spent a lot of time learning this stuff, partnering with different email service providers, with going to conferences, subscribing to these private organizations that are just on email. You can't tell me anything when it comes to email marketing. We can have a conversation and we can share information, and you could introduce me to something that I have not yet been, but you can't tell me that I'm wrong with what I do know. That's where I want to be. The new me, or not so much the new me, but the person I need to be, needs to have that same level of confidence. And yeah, that is the reality of that deep shift. And it's just such a thing. I see some folks in the chat, and presuming you're all entrepreneurs or thinking about it or in that space somewhere. That's how, that's the thing that keeps us with the career of entrepreneur, small business owner, is that we are making decisions not only for ourselves, but for our businesses, which are completely separate from ourselves, or should be. We can say that they're our babies and use that kind of language, but when we think about our contribution to society, to the community, to the world, even 8118 and I are two different. Our intentions are different. Who's attracted to us, and for what reasons are different. It is its own entity. It's its own thing. And so because of that, I have to think about what makes sense for me to be in alignment with 8118, or to stand aside. Like, how do I feel about me and making decisions for this company? And of course, for me, the biggest thing is sleeping well at night. I want to do, good and proper business. I want to be more of an asset than a liability. I am not a hustler. I'm not a grinder. So, I'm thinking about these things. Am I staying true to myself and what I would like to accomplish during my time, my living time? When folks are coming up and saying, while we're sad that Kenyana is no longer with us, she was this kind of person. And no matter what she was selling, no matter what product or what service, this is who she was. And even though it shifted over time, she was still the same person. She showed up a little differently, but her intentions were always pure and honest, and her business was an absolute reflection of that. So with that being said, share your jams. You can do it in the comments listening to the replay. You can always reach out to me directly. I am active, but I am accessible, and everything is Kenyana David. So with that being said, I will talk to you tomorrow. This podcast plays Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m., and it's produced by 716 Live, so you can always catch the episodes there. Sometimes I share them on my page in real time, and sometimes I share them later. But you can always go to 716 Live, Facebook, YouTube, I believe Instagram, Twitter, all the things. So with that, I would love to hear your shifting, and I would love to love on you and support you in that way. And with that being said, I'm going to bid you a good day.